Hi, I'm Barb.
Hi, I'm Pat.
Pat and I have a lot of interesting conversations.
Yes, and we thought you might like to listen in to our podcast that we've called Coffee House Inspirations.
We hope you will enjoy our topics.
Good morning, Barb.
Good morning, Pat.
Happy Easter.
Yes, it's Good Friday today.
Good Friday today. And today we're going to be, not because it's Good Friday, this is just totally a podcast moment, which you I think you committed us to this last week.
I think I did.
And we're going to talk about past life regressions today.
Okay.
And so I thought that we could start by building a little bit of a context around what this discussion is going to be referencing, I guess, more than anything. And I think where the whole work of past life regression came from is more of an Eastern concept in the beginning. And it's based on a concept also karma, which comes out of Eastern tradition as well. And karma is simply a process or an event of cause and effect. So if something happens and there's an effect, it's called karma. And we've kind of, in the Western world, I think we've taken a great deal of license in how we talk about karma. We kind of joke about it, but it's very, in a lot of Eastern traditions, it's very taken very seriously, and as it should be, because has been bearing out in Western culture as well. But it was based on karma, and so what was happening in current lifetimes, and especially in lifetimes where you're working out particularly difficult issues, it was believed to be, kind of burning off karma, working
right.
with karma. So if you had done or been somebody in another lifetime that had a negative impact on either you or other people, that because that was the cause of suffering for other people, there was an effect, and the effect would be felt, and it would have to be sort of equalized, so that you would have to work through a lifetime where you either were on the receiving end of that kind of maybe good misfortune or abuse or mishandling of something or other, and you'd have to experience it, and that way you would understand, and then you would kind of equalize the karma, the cause and effect.
Right. And kind of balance out the scales, right?
Yes, and in Christian culture, it's that kind of do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Mm-hmm.
Treat people as you want to be treated, kind of thing. So it's in the Christian culture, it's more of a practice than kind of having to relive these things. So
yeah.
And so in the kind of work around past life regression, this is where hypnosis comes into play. So we've got this idea of karma. We've got the idea of looking into past lives to see where this cause effect is coming from, or how we might be able to speed it along or understand it better or whatever. And that the process of getting to that is through hypnosis. And what hypnosis does is it takes us to a level of, brainwave activity where we can actually access the subconscious. And in the subconscious is where this information lies. So there's, so in our day-to-day, we're in our activity, we're in what's called a beta brainwave pattern, where we're fully aware. We're using this brain to, think our way through the daily events, and it's a fairly rapid brainwave activity. And as we kind of relax and move into a different brainwave activity called alpha, which is with brain activity, where you would be able to manage your meditations, where you might have, sort of daydreams, kind of where you flip in and out, where you're in a daydream and you just forgot that you were even anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Usually an alpha brainwave. And then right below that is theta, where it's kind of more of a mix between alpha and delta, which is sleep. So in hypnosis, you don't take people into a sleep event, you take them right below the alpha into the theta. It's kind of a subconscious access area.
Okay.
So that's kind of the bigger picture of it. So you've got this karma. You can access information about karma through past life regression. And the way to access information from past lives is to use hypnosis to get people into a state where they have stopped kind of using their thinking brain, and now have slowed that down enough so they can access information from the subconscious where this information lies. So that's kind of the context of it. And people have past life experiences in dreams, and you can attest to that. Or they have past life experiences through the process of hypnosis. So say a little bit about what your experience was.
Okay. I haven't really had a regression. I did have a past life regression one time, but I'm not sure how much I trusted it. But I did have a dream. This is probably within the last couple of years. And I was actually going to bring my dream journal and kind of reference it. But in the dream, after I had the dream, I wondered if what happened was a past life memory. So in the dream, I was in some kind of a military building, military attire, and I was wandering through this building, and I was looking for a commander of mine, and I walked into this room, and it looked like they were having some kind of a memorial of, I don't really know of what kind. There were pictures, and there were just kind of like memorial to different parts of, say, war or military. Anyways, I stood and I was looking at a picture, and as I was looking at the picture, I had this memory of being in a war, and my horse was traumatized. And I remember, like, trying to calm it down and hanging onto the reins, and it was just really traumatized, and it wasn't able to settle down. And I realized then, I can't remember if I actually did this, but it came to me that in those times, a lot of the soldiers would actually put their horses down because they were so traumatized. And so when I kind of came out of that, and I thought, oh, wow. And then when I came out of the dream, I thought, I wonder if that was a past life memory. And so I actually did some research on it to see if that was an actual thing. I couldn't really find anything, but then I was actually talking to you, and you said that as far as you know, that horses aren't able to absorb trauma. And so, and I think, am I correct in remembering this, that you mentioned that you had heard something about that could happen?
Yes, just in reference to that. So, there is some information that indicates horses can absorb quite a bit of trauma for, in some ways.
Oh, okay.
In the wars, and I'm not a historian by any means, so, my apologies to all historians. Is that horses were not necessarily put down because they were injured badly, but they were put down because they were traumatized so severely.
Okay.
So wasn't it, although they were also put down because they were shot or stabbed or something of that nature, but also because there was a level of trauma that they couldn't absorb. So that's certainly some.
Wow. So that really kind of, to me, that verifies that memory that I had was an actual memory. It was very, very clear. I could see myself, I could see the horse, I could see everything. And I would have no way of knowing that information. And then the more I thought about it, I realized when I was younger, up until, into elementary school, I would draw horses like crazy. I loved horses. I was kind of like horse crazy. I would draw them. That was the only thing I could draw. I would play horse. I would anything about horses. I just absolutely loved. And I never thought about it until I had that dream, and I thought, oh, I wonder if there's a connection there.
Yeah, well, it might well have been, because that seems to be the way those, those streams work, is that you have a certain passion in one lifetime, and that seems to, if in the research, it seems to follow through from, lifetimes, if it's a very deep passion, or even if it was some, trauma related to that.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been, doing a lot of reading, of course, over the years. And one of the people that I have really enjoyed is Dr. Brian Weiss, and he writes a lot about past life regression. And he has studied it for years, and has been involved in doing past life regressions on hundreds and hundreds of people. And of course, he was a little bit afraid to do this in the beginning, because he was a medical doctor and was concerned about being, ostracized from the profession, and because he was too weird or something like that. But just in fall, so I was reading a bit about his book in this book the other day, and I came across this one fellow who had a dream, and that's why it made me think of your experience. And he wasn't in a past life regression, but he was in a workshop with Dr. Weiss, and he had a dream. And he didn't have any understanding of what it was. And it went something like this. One night during the professional training that I attended at the Crossings in Austin, Texas, I had a dream unlike anything I've ever had before or since. In it, I was one millions of octangle disc-shaped objects, I was one of, which traveled at light speed to and from Earth's surface to an outer universe above it. As we left Earth with information about this planet, we would approach a vortex-type opening shaped like a funnel, and we would begin swirling circular patterns as we entered it once we passed. So it goes on and on about a bit more about this kind of net disc kind of thing that he was describing.
Uh-huh.
And he traveled through the universe a bit, and he felt connected to everything, and he felt that each of the little kind of sections of the net was connected to something else, and to something else, and to something else, and it just grew in proportion.
Wow.
After he had the dream, he was outside in the afternoon, and Brian Weiss and his daughter were standing outside just getting some air and having a coffee or something, and he told Dr. Weiss about the dream. And as he kind of went into the dream, Brian Weiss brother realized that it was a story about Indra's net, which is deep in, I think, in the Hindu tradition. And it's about it's a kind of a metaphor that the world is like a giant net. And each one net with all of these little sections that are connected to other sections, to other sections, to other sections. It's also called, I think it's called Indra's pearls or something like that, because it's kind of like a set of pearls, they're all connected, and they can be in one row or four rows or whatever. And as he described this dream to Dr. Weiss began to explain to him what he knew about this Indra's net, which is, a deep sort of deeply embedded in the culture to try and explain the composition or the nature of the universe. So I thought, from that point of view, and of course, the fellow that had the dream had no clue about this. He was just so overwhelmed with the structure of the dream and the discussion of it, and then understanding that it actually was something deeply bedded in mythology, I guess you could say, and into religion. So that was kind of cool.
That's amazing. That's quite a dream.
Yes, it's quite a dream, and I think that it just speaks to what you were talking about. It wasn't necessarily a past life regression, but it was deeply in the mythology of the world. That you can access this information in dreams in a similar way that you can access some of that information in past life regression.
Yeah, because I had no knowledge of any of that. And like I said, I didn't even know if that was a practice that was done. Um, but I just remember thinking that that's what it felt like. It felt like it was a memory of
Yes.
some kind that I had had. So yeah, it's very interesting.
So I have had 3 or 4 past life regressions, and some of them have been more profound than others. But the information that I got sort of from the hypnotherapist at the time was that that past life regressions are kind of like turning a light on something that maybe has been a theme in your life, or that has been an issue that's followed you around in your life for some time,
Hmm.
that you can, and he gave a kind of an interesting metaphor to it. So if you've moved into a new house, let's say, and it's your first night in the house and you're there by yourself, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning and the wind comes up and it's getting weird, and all of a sudden there's this banging, and it feels like and sounds like somebody's trying to get into the house, and yet there hasn't been an entry, and so it stops for a while and then it bangs again, and you're in this terror of what this is outside, and the daylight arises and it's garbage cans at the bottom of the alley. And he said it's like that. It's like you've had this issue or this thing that's going on in your life, and then you turn a light on it and it's this thing.
Okay.
And then you can feel the absolute relaxation. You can feel like that's not going to scare you anymore. And so I think the one that was probably most profound for me was a regression where I found myself in an army, and I'm not a historian in any way, but it was like a Confederate army or something of that nature. And I was a soldier, and I had a colonel who was a nasty piece of work. And he was trying to create some disturbance in the area so that he could go to war with some of the natives in this area.
Hmm.
And he had sent me out on missions to try and find out where they were, and to get information back to him so I could, number one, identify where they were, how many there were, and this and that and the other thing. And I decided fairly early on in this mission that I was given that I wasn't going to give the information to him, because I knew what he was going to do with it and that people would die. And so eventually I basically got kicked out of the army. That's how it turned out. And then he could sort of keeps taking you forward in time and taking you forward in time and taking you forward in time, till I was an older man, because I was an older man, and I was in a little kind of cottage area where I was living my life out, and I had kind of given up on life, and I hadn't really done much with my life. I was just sort of waiting to die. And so then he takes you through your death. And at the, as you're in the hypnotic sort of state, you don't fear that at all. You're just more or less going through it as he guides you through it, and passed over. And then this overwhelming sense of love, and I was crying, and just this peaceful release, and it's something that I had not ever experienced before. And my mother was there, as in his mother was there. And it was just this most joyous reunion imaginable. So that was felt throughout my body, and I had not felt some of those things that deeply ever before. And so that was, and then he takes you through another process, because at the end of this, the point of it is to figure out what you were doing in that lifetime and what did you learn. And so then he moves you forward past the the entry where you're met, and onto a level where you have your guides. And he said for most people there are between 8 and 14 guides. I had 9 that were just more of images of energy, I guess, standing, waiting for me.
Uh-huh.
And the purpose of that seemed to me to be, as I went through that, to just go through what had happened. How was that? What did you learn? What have you got? What do you think you have yet to learn? It's a very loving experience, a very present experience, and non-judgmental. And then as I went through this, looking through this group of people, the person that was at the end of this line was the colonel.
Oh.
And that colonel kind of changed his look. He changed almost though he had unmasked or something of that nature, but it wasn't quite like that. And it was my dad from this lifetime.
Oh, wow.
So then you go through that process to the end, and then he takes you out of the hypnotic state, and then you have a discussion about trying to look at what in that experience could you identify in this present lifetime that you're having now. And I got it. It was about,
Did you?
it's kind of a long convoluted thing, which I won't go into, but it had to do with the scouting and the looking for, going out, being sent out to look for things and then take messages back. And in my family, there were a lot of uneasy moments, and I was always the one that was sent out to see what kind of a mood somebody was in, and if it was okay to do this and do that and the other thing. And it was a great burden to me as a child, and so that just disappeared.
Oh, really?
Whatever inclination I carried through with that in my adult life was just gone. And so that reminded me of that, because when he set that up and talked about the garbage cans in the night, this idea of having to be the one that's sent out to do certain things as a child that you might not want to do, and looking at the experience of this past life regression, putting those things together, and it's like putting a light on it, and then it disappears.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Once you bring it into the light. And
the effect of that, I continued to feel and understand that certain things that were kind of as a part of what I thought was my personality was not really. It was part of a stream of consciousness that was never resolved.
Well, it's interesting because how many times, do we say to each other, oh, I wonder if that's from a past life? Because if somebody has an interest in something, or a connection to something that in this lifetime there's no explanation for, a lot of people will say, oh, I wonder if it's from a past life. Like say you have a real connection to the Victorian time, or you have a real fear of something, that you can't explain in this lifetime. Mm-hmm. Is it from another lifetime?
Mm-hmm. Well, in both of these, because we had two authors that we were going to mention. One of them was Brian Weiss, and the other one was Michael Newton, which we both have read had read years ago.
Yeah.
And people that have had in the journey of the souls by Michael Newton, and also in Brian Weiss's book, there are people that have had fear of water for years and are regressed, and they have drowned.
Mm-hmm.
Or people that have a kind of a phantom pain. Like there's this one that was really interesting in the Brian Weiss book, was a man that had a pain in his neck that they could not. They had done MRIs, they had done ultrasound, they had done all sorts of things, and they could never identify. And it was excruciating pain for him. And he eventually found his way to Brian Weiss, and he did a past life regression with him. And he had been severely beaten and stabbed in a war skirmish with a sword right through his neck.
Wow. And
the interesting thing about that in the follow-up is that pain literally disappeared.
Really? That's very interesting. Really interesting. So the only past life regression that I ever did, I did actually do one, but the only thing I can remember from it, now this is kind of interesting, is he told me that I had once lived on another planet.
Mhm. Well, I think you can go as far down that rabbit hole as is possible to go. Here's my sense about that, is that I think that we live in such a limited state of consciousness, and that we're so culturally trained and indoctrinated to believe that what you see is what you get.
Mm-hmm.
And that the following sort of esoteric paths into other areas is really not culturally that acceptable. You're considered kind of a weirdo, or somebody
Yes.
grounded, or somebody who's not happy in this world and they're just trying to get to Mars or something like that.
Yeah. I'm out of here. Well, I think that some of the questions, like when I was kind of looking at Michael Newton's book and a review of his book and stuff, some of the questions that people want answered, when they do a past life regression, is they want to know why we're here, where do we go after death, what happens when we get there, and so those are all questions that probably most of us have. And past life regression is a way of, for people to kind of explore that, and like you said, can really resolve some things. Yes. Or explain
yes
some things in their life.
Especially if you've got this one thing that just doesn't make sense, and maybe you've
yes
had some therapy about it, or you've talked about it ad nauseum or whatever, and nothing seems to change about it, and it just doesn't seem to resolve itself. It's kind of like a clue that there might be something else going on. Yeah, it's very.
That's a good. Yeah, that's a good way. That's actually a good way of putting it. A clue. It's a clue.
So, I mean, how do we, what do we say about this in the end?
Well, like I said, like you said, it's one of those things that in a lot of cultures and stuff is just really, like woo woo. But in other cultures is a very real and practiced and believed, part of life. So I think it really depends, on again what your beliefs are. Some people would even say, that it was, I won't say evil, but basically some people would believe that.
Well, if you really wanted to make sure people didn't go further or study it or investigate it further, you just tell them the devil was there and they'd stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So so I guess in the end, for me, I would say if you're curious, it's fun, but it can also be quite a revelation, and that you need to find a good hypnotherapist if you're going to do, and do some reading. We recommend those two in particular, Michael Newton and Brian Weiss. And it's also something that could be extremely sort of comforting for people who have lost loved ones.
Yes.
And to take a look at some other possibilities and to find some comfort there. And so I think there's good reason to have a peek around the corner there.
Yeah. Because I know it's nothing that I have really been that interested in my lifetime. I just haven't given it too much thought until I had that dream. And then when I had that dream, that's what that felt like. It felt like a past life memory. And so, I kind of gave it a little bit more.
Sort of piqued your interest.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Well, I think we could end it there.
Okay.
That was fun. I hope we didn't freak anybody out.
I don't think so. We're pretty safe.
Yes. Straight out of the suburbs.
That's right.
Okay, well, that was fun, Barb, and we'll see you next time.
Okay.
And bye-bye, and have a good Easter weekend.
You as well. Bye, Pat.
Bye.